Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 173 of Real Blend, a podcast that knows at least one thing that Michael Jordan is better at than LeBron James. On this week's show, Black Widow wins big at the box office. Space Jam 2, starring the GOAT, according to some people, drops this week. And then director Adam Robitel is going to be joining the show. He has directed the 2 Escape Room films, and he's back with the sequel, Escape Room Tournament of Champions, and we're going to have a great interview with him coming up in a bit. But first, I have to introduce the guys. I'm going to start with Jake Hamilton, who's petting his dog, and he is from Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jake. How are you?
How'd you know what I was doing?
Because I can see you. I'm watching you.
Remember last time we were in a room together and I threw a rock at you?
I do remember that, yes. Remember how much my ear hurt me when we were together in that room?
I do.
We were also with Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev.
Brother, good to see you. It was great having you over the house this week. Last week, actually. It was good to see the family. So
God, it was so much fun. My boys are in love with the McCarthys, by the way. They think... PJ actually said to me, Kevin is so much cooler than you are.
First of all, I tried propping you up, and for people, I'll keep this 30 seconds. Basically,
you did.
Sean was visiting his wife Michelle's family about 10 minutes from where I live, so I invited Sean over, and we had a cookout with Sean, Michelle, and his entire family, and it was really nice. And Sean read a Real Blend review while I was actually grilling. And Sean's wife, Michelle, started crying during the review. Like, she had to get tissues and wipe her tears. And this, I don't know if we'll ever get to the review on the show, but it's a very special review. At some point, we'll read it on the show. But
is it this week, Gabe?
It's not on this week. We're playing catch up on some, and I try to go in order as they come in, just to keep it organized. But it'll come up.
Keep a lookout. Keep a lookout for a very special review that might make you cry, just like it made Sean's wife cry. So stay tuned for that.
Housekeeping. If you're watching us on YouTube and you can see Jake petting his dog, thank you for joining us. Please head down to the descriptions, and in there you're going to find, well, first off, hit subscribe and turn on your notifications. Give us a like. We're trying to build up the channel there. For if you're listening to us where you get your audio needs met, and you want to join us in video form, head over there to youtube.com/RealBlendPodcast. We're available every place you get your podcast needs met. And if you want to sign up for our Real Blend Premium, which gives you a free episode, a bonus episode on Mondays. This is the week you're going to want to do it, because we haven't had a chance as a team to sort of sit down and discuss the events surrounding the recent Quentin Tarantino interview. And I think by now, if you're listening to this show, you probably have had a chance to sit down and listen to the 2-hour interview that we did live at Quentin's New Beverly Cinema. But one of the fun things that came out of the New York interview that we did with him was the craziness that surrounded the immediate before that. So we're going to make that the premium episode this week. So if you want to make sure you hear the ins and outs, the sort of inside baseball behind the scenes of that, sign up for Real Blend Premium by heading to the description down below, and it'll tell you how exactly you need to do that. So let's get into this week's show. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing. Because we did that thing with Quentin Tarantino, Quentin and his publicists were extremely nice enough to give us 5 signed copies of Quentin Tarantino's new book based upon Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And
which is crazy, by the way. That's amazing that we have. Can I stop for a second? We're giving away 5 signed Quentin Tarantino books.
Correct.
That is insane.
Yes, on our show.
So
and we
cool.
each have signed copies ourselves, which is nice.
Right. Which we're not giving to anybody. These are 5 separate copies, by the way, just a heads up.
So we're sharing. So head to the description of this episode for more information about where you can enter. I do apologize. This is a US-based contest, so I know if you're listening to us internationally, we do apologize. But we will try to figure out something for you guys that's special somewhere down the line. So, Gabe is showing them. Look at this.
Gabe's
but you're not gonna. Are you gonna show yourself on the screen or no?
No. This is a tease enough. But it's funny that we're recording today. I'm dropping these off to the woman at Cinema Blend that handles our giveaways and who's going to be handling and shipping these out.
Excellent.
And I watched Tarantino sign all 5 of those. These are legitimately signed, obviously.
I didn't forge his signature or anything like that.
We stood there. He was so cool, and I will get into this on our bonus episode at some point. But not only did he sign everybody's book in the audience, he stayed later and signed those 5 books. So these were like on borrowed time. Like he had a dinner to go to and he was like, yeah, no problem, I'll sign him. And there was no pushback whatsoever.
Yeah.
Super great guy.
I just wanted to bring those over to brag that I have them, but also so people at home know that if you get one, it's that much more valuable because not only is it signed by Quentin Tarantino, but I've handled it.
It's been handled by Gabe.
And Gabe's address is...
Weekly poll for this week. Okay, so we didn't do a show last week because we dropped the 2-hour Tarantino, but Black Widow opened in theaters and on Disney Plus, and we're going to get to the box office in a minute, and we're going to give you guys our review and then some spoiler talk on it. But before we get to that, I'm going to throw this to Kevin. Kevin, the weekly poll is, where would you rank Black Widow in terms of the MCU movies? And I'm not asking you, but I want to ask you what you think the audience said. Sure. I gave 3 options: upper tier MCU, middle of the pack, or bottom third of the MCU. Where do you think they went?
It's interesting to me because I feel like it falls in between the first and second option in terms of like how I feel the film plays out in terms of like upper tier and mid tier. I don't think it's that black and white, but I think our audience, it's so interesting because the reaction to that film has been so positive and we all really dug the movie. But in terms of upper tier, I'm thinking about our audience. I mean, upper tier is definitely like an Endgame, an Infinity War, Civil War, Winter Soldier. Those are upper tier MCU. So I'm going to go with middle tier, but I won't be surprised if upper tier made the cut.
Middle of the pack got 60% of the vote, and upper tier is third with 14%. So 26% said bottom third of the MCU. I'll remind you, we don't know Jake Hamilton's opinion of this movie yet, and we'll have to wait till the spoiler talk of the film.
I don't think any of us here would say it's like a 5 out of 5 masterpiece, and I don't think we would put it up there with Infinity War, Civil War, or Winter Soldier. But I think it's better than bottom tier, and I think it's slightly better than middle tier, personally.
The wording of the poll could be misconstrued because it's bottom third, so someone could get kind of technical and be like, it's at the top of the bottom third, and that's still middle. Like, you know, I don't know.
Gotcha.
Because speaking of that bottom third, like at the bottom of the bottom third, you have like the Incredible Hulk and Thor 2, but at the top of that third,
I like the Hulk.
You've got
this isn't science. Like it's just we're just.
I like
gauging.
the Hulk more than Black Widow.
But Gabe brings up an interesting point because bottom tier MCU, Thor 2 is probably the bottom of the barrel.
No,
right? It's one of the
no.
Thor 2 is awful.
Iron Man 2 is far worse than Thor 2.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I think collectively, most people put those 2 at the bottom. Most people will put those 2 at the bottom.
This is an argument for another time, but Thor 2 we can all agree is terrible, right?
I actually disagree with that. I also honestly don't think it's terrible.
I'm not sure that I'm not sure arguably that they have a terrible movie.
No,
honestly.
I don't think they do.
That's fair.
I think there's just some that aren't as good as the great ones. There's fun things in Thor 2. Like the
Loki moment.
Whenever I remember I've only seen it twice. Whenever I did a rewatch before Endgame, I remember getting to Dark World and like almost dreading it. And remember thinking like that was significantly better. Now I'm not saying good, but significantly better than I remembered it being. And Iron Man 2 was significantly worse.
We are all on different wavelengths when it comes to Thor. Just to clarify for our audience, like I don't love Ragnarok. They love Jake and Sean
Ragnarok's top
Ragnarok.
5. Ragnarok's top 5, baby.
Ragnarok,
top tier.
Yeah,
it's not top tier. I don't think
it's chef's kiss, as Gabe says.
But see, I love Thor 1. I love Branagh's film, and most people don't love that one.
I like
that strange boat.
Yeah.
Let's all cry about the fact that Thor: The Dark World was supposed to be directed by Patty Jenkins.
Really? I did not know that.
Oh yeah, and then through creative differences, she left. And Alan Taylor, who directed multiple episodes of Game of Thrones, stepped in to replace, but never really cared for the material, and that's why Thor: The Dark World comes off kind of half-heartedly, and DC won where Patty Jenkins left off because they snatched her up for Wonder Woman. So things kind of worked out for her in a really good way, and she dodged a bullet with Thor: The Dark World. Okay, let's talk about a different sequel, Escape Room, Tournament of Champions. So this Escape Room movie escaped me. Sorry for that awful pun. I didn't watch it, but I caught up with it after the fact when we were getting to sit down with Adam Robitel, who has this sequel coming out, because he made it for like $9 million and it went on to gross like $170 million. Like it was extremely profitable in a January slot where sometimes you drop a horror film and it just connects with an audience. And it's, you know, loosely based on these escape room things that you can go to as a group, and they're team building exercises. But in these ones, of course, if you don't solve the puzzle in the rooms, then you die. But they're very practical sets, and they're very elaborate traps, and it's kind of fun to watch these people go through them and figure out who's going to solve it and who isn't. So they have a new one coming out. It's called Escape Room Tournament of Champions. We got a chance to sit down with the director, Adam Robitel. He gets really in-depth about horror and where the genre is going to go, and filmmaking moving forward, and has some really great insight into the whole process. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this conversation with Adam Robitel on behalf of Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
I would love to know, just with a sequel, you know, we get about 9 minutes into this movie before you plunge your characters right into the action. And so I want to know the difference between not having to spend a big chunk of your film educating your audience, you know, on what the concept is, versus being able to just really hit the ground running and plunge your characters into escape room type concepts.
Yeah, it was a blessing and a curse. I mean, I feel like what the first movie had with educating the audience, and then with the characters, you know, feeling like maybe it's still a game. You got some humor that I felt I actually kind of missed from the sequel in a way, because it's so severe so quickly. But we also felt like the benefit of that was, like you said, you don't have to educate the audience necessarily. They know what they're getting. And so for me, it was like, okay, if there's going to be a sequel, certainly we want bigger, badder, meaner rooms. But I like the idea that Minos they're super manipulative. They're manipulating every aspect of your life. I think coming out of the pandemic in particular, we can really relate to these supernatural forces in our lives that we don't really have agency over our lives. And I think that's something that's really a lot of us feel right now. And so for me, it was like, okay, how can we expand the game? How can we take these spaces that we really relate to, whether it's a subway car or a motel room, and then, you know, through the trauma of our characters, turn those into deadly spaces. And it was tough. It was really tough, because we did sort of all of the big, you know, we did fire, we did gravity, we did gas in the first movie. So coming into this movie as a PG-13 movie that can't rely on gore, and that was a mandate from my producers initially. It was like, shoot, how do we kill people? You know, it was like, and how do we make it visual, and how do we, you know? And so it was like, I had remember being a kid in Boston on old train cars and going through tunnels. And I thought, you know, how cool would it be if a train car derailed? And then from there it became, okay, well, what would the threat be? Okay, electricity, third rail. Okay, what if it turned into a giant Tesla coil? And so that was sort of the wellspring of like the creativity. Was like, Minos is much bigger than we thought. You know, they have games all over the world. B, you know, nowhere is safe, you know. So that and then figuring out the rest of the rooms was really challenging. You know, I wanted to do lasers, but, you know, I haven't seen a lot of great best-in-class lasers. There's a lot of doubt we could pull it off. And then I thought, okay, lasers, security system. Okay, what about a bank? You know, we found this awesome Art Deco bank in Cape Town, and it was like this amazing location. And then like the beach, like anecdotally, you know, I like the idea of going through quicksand. That was always a fear of mine from an old Lassie episode I had seen. And
you're always raised as a kid to think that quicksand is going to be a much bigger deal than it ends up being in life.
It's true. No, it's true. You're like, okay, I'm fine. You know, you climb out. You know, but it was like early. I was like, okay, what about like a cool like ancient temple? And we did all this cool concept art, and it looked really cool, but it didn't feel like an escape room movie. It felt like an Indiana Jones movie. And so we were like, okay, what about a beautiful Cape Cod beach? And so it was an iterative process, and certainly the hardest part of it was coming up with the spaces, and you know, that felt right. And we always say, like, Minos, unlike other traditional horror movies, and look, I love the Cubes, I love Saw. I mean, I love those movies to death, literally. But the mandate was to make these spaces beautiful and make it look like its own universe. And so I was more influenced by Fincher's The Game than anything else, I think, in terms of like the way Minos, I see them as like the Johnny Ives of death rooms. Like they pick out the wallpaper and the sconces, and they really engineer the space to be beautiful. And so that was always the philosophy.
Adam, I got to punch in real fast and just let you know we got to exclusively debut one of the images from the film, and we got the beach scene, which ends up becoming like a sort of artificial, modification of a beach. And when I got it, I looked at it, I was like, I don't think this is finished. Like, that looks like green screen. It looks like, is it supposed to look like this? And then in context, you realize, oh, okay, well, this is just part of the room.
That's part of the technical issue. Like, they come out and it looks like a live action beach, right? And I, as the filmmaker, my studio says, well, you're not going to be able to do CG, beach for the whole scene. Like, so I'm like, okay, how do we get that gag? How do we do like the holy shit, are we outside? Like it's a Doctor Who episode. But then we built into the puzzle. Oh, okay. They take a photo, and at the end of the day, they're still in a room, right? And so it was taking a cue from the first movie with the ice room gag, and then only going a little further with it, which is like a full 360. And then and that the translate that you see, that's a massive piece of fabric where we took a photo of a South African beach and we lined it up, and then we printed it on like this huge piece of fabric that like covered the entire set. And it was super challenging to figure out how to do that, how to light it, but at the end of the day, they are theatrical, but they are in a room, and so we use that conceit to our advantage in a way that I think makes sense. You want the claustrophobia. It wouldn't have made sense to make it feel like an open aired space the whole time. Because then you wouldn't feel that claustrophobia. And each room had its own challenges. There was no subways, there's no train cars in South Africa. So my production design team, led by Ed Thomas, like they got a 3D model off the web or somewhere. There was 2 scale of a New York subway car, and they built it, and like little things like, when we have the kids running through the turnstiles and running down the stretch of the train station, that was one little section of a build that we did. And we had to do all these tricks of bringing in new actors and new stunt performers, and just with wipes and with cuts to make it feel like it's like this long, vast train station. So, each room was like a whole film school for me to learn how to, and they're big ideas, but like in a smaller budgeted movie. And so every room seemed like, oh my God, we're never gonna, how are we going to survive? Oh God, the beach is next week. What are we going to do? The beach itself, it was all practical sand. I mean, we had 22,000 kilos of sand that they brought in. It smelled like a dead crab. I mean, the special effects team aerated the sand and liquefied it. And after about a minute, the actor would start to sink. And oh shit, but it's bubbling and it looks like oatmeal. Like it was going in their eyes and scratching their corneas. And you guys know, you walk on a beach for even 10 minutes and you're exhausted. And we had 40 people on the set trying, so each
your calves must be huge right now.
I have the biggest calves in all of my townhouse complex, for sure.
Adam, I want to talk about the idea of horror sequels, because for every, Aliens, one that's great, we have a Jaws 2 or a Jaws 3 or a Jaws 4. And I'm sort of curious, what lessons, if any, as a director, you've learned from past horror sequels that didn't work, that you can look at that and go, okay, because they did X, Y, and Z, that's a good lesson to maybe avoid that for my own horror sequel.
Look, I mean, sequels are really hard. And I'll be honest with you guys. I tried to do an origin story of a villain and a first attempt at this movie that did not work. And it became clear I wanted to do I would still love maybe 4 movies down to do an origin story, like who the puzzle maker is. And again, who is that Johnny Ives behind the scenes? Like, that's an interesting story to me. I didn't want to do the same thing. But what was clear to me after the first test screening of this other version that I wanted to do is it was because it was a Zoe revenge story. Ultimately, I didn't have enough screen time to like go into this whole other B story. But I didn't want to do what we did on the first movie. And I think in some ways we sort of do that. I mean, we give them, it was hard. It was hard. I think the more you explain about behind the scenes of Minos, the less scary they are, the less omniscient, the more you know them, the more, and so that was the thing, and I knew I wanted to deliver on bigger set pieces, but the idea that they manipulate us and that every choice you think you make in your life is a fallacy and is a lie, I think is very resonant today. You know, we had a pandemic where our entire lives were just like thrown to the wayside, and everything we thought we knew was challenged, and the paradigms have been shattered. And so I think that's the takeaway, and that's where we got with the sequel, is this idea of there's no free will, which I think is a cool thematic hook for, you know, the idea that there are the Illuminati out there. I like the idea that Minos, not only do they do death rooms, but they start plagues and they topple governments and they create plane crashes, and anything that they can do and bet on and have entertainment, they will, you know. I rambled a little bit. I don't know if I nailed the sequel. All I know is this is the sequel that this movie needed. You know what I mean? In a way. And it's a very hard, you know, aliens, you know, I think there's just like 3 sequels like we could talk about that are like almost on par with the first movie. And it's, you know, so it's definitely challenging. And I'll always think of the things later that I should have done or could have done. But, you know, it's also moving. It's a moving train too. And the other thing is like the studio's like, okay, we need another one, you know what I mean? And I would have loved to have spent another year on the script, you know what I mean? But they're like, oh, you got to hit that date, you know? And so it's you gotta work quick, and for better or worse, you know?
Well, I thought this was wildly entertaining, man. It honestly is. It like you said, a train is a great way to describe it, because it never stops moving from the time that it kicks off. So I want to get into the rooms really quickly, though. From this perspective, I thought that the sets were absolutely incredible. I'm glad you singled out the bank, because the bank is great, and the lasers, the way that you use them, are great. How long do you try to protect your actors from being able to see the room? Like, do you try to capture any authenticity with them seeing it for the very first time? Or do you let them go into it and kind of explore it and figure it out? Because they do a great job of, like, in the moment trying to figure out, like, where should we be looking? Where are the clues, kind of thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, I there's certainly a world, if we had more time, like, I would almost love to shoot in a way where they don't even know where the clues are. But because everything is so designed, and, you know, the lasers is a great example. Like, it's all perfectly to the math of, like, my visual effects team. When India Moore's character steps on that first laser, 7 lasers go on. Okay. The next time they step on, they trigger another tile, 7 more lasers. So you have to know exactly where they are, because, oh shit, you'd be vivisected if you were standing right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were many times we were standing around, like, just like, oh shit, you'd be dead if you were right here right now. You know, kind of thing. But yeah, to answer your question, what I do is I typically, a day before, we'll get a rehearsal in, we'll get them into this space, so they know where they're ultimately going to be going, and they can build that into their blocking. You know, the train, they have to know where the certain things are, because if you get there on the day and they're like, where's the Z handle? You know, it's like you're burning time.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, a lot of it had to be sort of like pre-baked in.
Talking about sort of just the actors themselves, I'm always sort of curious. It's particularly when it's a large group of actors, how much their off time, offset, and, you know, in between days shooting matters to you as a director. Like, do you kind of want them to all be hanging out? Like, do you want them to all go get drinks and have dinner, like, at night in between? Or is it important for them to all have their individual time? Would it make you feel better as a director if you knew they were all getting along as friends? Like, is that even anything that you have a right to say as a director? Like, what does their relationship mean to you in terms of make the film better?
I mean, I had we were in South Africa, so we did like a day of bonding where I had them all. We went and did a safari kind of thing, and you know, petted a cheetah and stuff. And so look, at the end of the day, they all make their own alliances and friendships and stuff. And I try to let them do their thing. I mean, you know, look, I'm a film geek, you know, and I love, even if I wasn't directing something, I'd be down on set every day through osmosis trying to learn. These movies are hard because, you know, on the page, it might say, you know, Zoe comes over here and does this thing. Meanwhile, I have 5 other actors who don't know what they're doing, you know, in that moment. And I have to figure out things for them to do, blocking that makes sense, character logic stuff. So it's like, it's a lot of moving pieces in terms of like what they do. And I usually, you know, some of them will go out and have fun and do stuff at bars and stuff like that. I'm usually at home in the fetal position on the floor, you know, crying about what I didn't get that day. So, you know, but yeah, you know, look, I think a sense of kinship is good. And, you know, and in a sense of animus too, there's a pressure cooker that happens. And I think some actors, a movie like this is such the set pieces become the star in a way. And, you know, it can be frustrating for certain actors because they're used to just meaty drama stuff with a lot of like pathos and a lot of text and a lot of stuff to do and say. And they are beholden to the space in a way. They're being put into this meat churner, so to speak. So, you know, some like it more than others. I mean, Logan Miller, I mean, I think he has a voodoo doll of me because I literally, you know, in the first movie, I crushed him in a room. I crushed him in a room. In this room, he's in a tank filled with, you know, Hungarian water that's cold. And so I think by the end of it, he was just like, go to hell, dude. You know, like, you know. It's funny because I did some stunt work early on, and I would love to be hanging from a cable and, you know, and getting that rash on my leg and like, you know, just doing that stuff. But, you know, some people don't, you know, it's like, it depends on who it is, you know.
We were talking to the director of Spiral recently, and one of their traps
Darren.
involves putting Sam Jackson in a trap, and he was just like, he's like, you better know your shit that day.
Oh man, a reverse bad trap, motherfucker. That's hilarious. Oh my god, I'm getting hives just thinking about that, like the prop not working and like Sam Jackson just going off on you, and oh. That's amazing.
Adam, the one thing I love about these two films so far is that you get to the ending and you very clearly tease, like, I've got more story to tell. Without having to give away any specifics, you know, about your ending, I want to know, do you decide very early on, like, we're going to have a teasy ending, you know, we're not going to bring it to some sort of conclusion? Does that decision made for you where the studio's like, no, this is a franchise, keep it going?
You know, you always want to end on a high note. I think part of the fun of the finale of this movie is that it's like a mind fuck. And so, yeah, look, they're serialized, you know, and again, you know, there's so many different directions you can go in. I do like drama and I like story. And so these are meant to be roller coasters. And so I think it was sort of the world that we've set up is sort of that kind of thing. And meanwhile, and you want them in this bingeable kind of world where you want people to go, oh, fuck, what happens next? You know? And so that was definitely sort of the mandate. And I didn't want to do a closed ending. I thought it would be too pat if somehow, you know, you want to feel like you know, it's a game of chess and you know, Zoe's a mouse in a machine and there's a Hannibal Lecter somewhere who really kind of likes her, but isn't quite ready to let her go yet, you know? So,
you know, Adam, horror is my favorite genre. And one thing I always thought was interesting about it is that it kind of comes in waves in like eras, like late 90s, early 2000s are very much sort of the slasher, the screams, and then I Know What You Did Last Summer. And then we kind of got into sort of like the torture porn, you know, with Saw and Hostel and those films. But lately I've had a hard time like kind of figuring out what era we're in because there is no sort of definitive type of horror movie coming out. It's a whole wide range, you know, from films like this to Jordan Peele films. I'm sort of curious as a director of this genre, like where do you think we're at in this genre right now?
I mean, I always, you know, you always it'll be really interesting what comes out in the next few years after our lives have been upended the way they have. And, you know,
do you think a pandemic era is coming? A pandemic, I
hope not, because I just think we've lived it. And like, I would not, like, I've seen a few pandemic scripts and I'm like, by the way, like escape from being locked in your house. Like, I don't know if that's like too soon, you know what I mean? Yeah, look, I mean, I'm a fan of it all. I'm writing, I have this crazy sci-fi horror alien invasion movie that just will blow your mind that we're trying to go set up now. And it's super fucking cool. But like, in terms of the waves, like, you know, I don't know that all I know is that genre is here to stay in all its forms, and it's still kicking ass at the box office. And it just seems like the suits and those with the purse strings are starting to finally wake up to the fact that we are impervious to even plagues. Our people will go and see a fucking movie, even, you know, even at the hands of a deadly virus. So, you know, I think it's a great renaissance, you know, and I don't know if it'll ever be a wave of the way it was, like you say, you know, such a dramatic, like, here's what these movies are. Scream is coming out. There's a new Scream coming out, you know, there will invariably be another Texas Chainsaw, Candyman. So I think it's just robust, and it's I don't think it's fitting into any one bucket anymore, you know.
Yeah. To that end, because franchises keep coming back around, you mentioned Scream, you know, which one would you love to get your hands on? Which one would you love to, what sandbox you want to play in?
You know, I'm really all about trying to do originals right now. You know, nice. I can't. It's so hard. You know, you go in, you have a lot of hate from people who love certain properties, and also so that's what I'm trying to do. I have an original horror series that I'm going to do next with Darren Aronofsky as a producer, that I'm super excited about. It uses addiction, the opioid crisis, as a jumping off point for a genre show.
Wait, is this like Requiem for the Dream, like Requiem for a Dream, like a horror version of Requiem for a Dream?
No, that was a horror movie.
Yeah, that's true too.
That was one of the scariest movies ever made. There's not much I can say about it yet, other than it uses addiction as a monster, and it's super fucking cool. And, you know, so that's where I'm going, is just trying to do, not like what I did on my first movie, which was Deborah Logan, you know, to take Alzheimer's and then turn it into a possession movie. Here, I'm trying to use addiction as the same kind of engine, you know. But yeah, I want to do originals. I don't want to, you know, the Stephen King properties and stuff. It's like, I'm not good enough to do a Stephen King. You know what I mean? It's like, so I'm gonna go break myself on something that nobody can blame me for ruining, you know.
But a King adaptation would be a lot of fun. It could be a lot of fun. You know, I want to also get to the way that Jake is talking about horror, and it's being used a lot. You know, this Purge movie coming, and Quiet Place brought people back to the theaters. That's a genre that they're using to lure people back to theaters. You're with Sony. It's not getting a streaming version. It's only in theaters. How important is that decision to you?
This movie is such a theatrical experience. I mean, the mix alone, the music, Brian Tyler's sonic, I mean, the music he does in this, and John Kerry is just incredible. And you need to hear it in a good, like, you know, we heard it on our mixing stage, which is like, it's sad that the audience will never, I mean, there's some theaters will have great sound, but the sound just hits you, you know, and you again, it's like going to Magic Mountain, where you know, you have this experiential thing. And I think what's going to happen in the next couple of years, there's going to be some new technology that's going to come along that is going to blow people's minds. It's only a matter of time, and they're only going to be able to get it in the theatrical experience. The sad part is with horror, you know, they don't want to spend a lot of money on it typically. So you get the $10 million movies, you get, you know, but it's like doing a $30 million, like a Prisoners, like even Prisoners, which is the kind of movies I want to make. They're not making them anymore for theaters. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, you know, and so it's that weird conundrum. You get $200 million Marvel movies, and then you get, you know, the James Wan movies, and there's nothing in between. And that's the frustrating part of it, you know? But people love being scared in a group, and, you know, a date night or whatever, just hanging out with your friends. And so that's the great secret sauce right now. And I think we lost a portion of our theater going audience for good. I mean, you know, if you're an older person, you know, or whatever, you know, do you want to take that risk? You know, I don't know, you know, it seems like right now the kids aren't going back to theaters as much as they want to be. You know, some of these younger kids aren't vaccinated yet. And so I think that the sweet spot's going to be these horror movies. And Escape Room is different.
This movie will bring them back. I'm very confident this movie. I have two boys, and they're both asking me about it. So
I hope so. God bless you. You know, and you know, at the end of the day, they're PG-13. They're lighter fare. I get a lot of people saying, I can't watch a Saw, but I can watch this and enjoy it. And you know, the people that just can't deal with blood and stuff. So there's a different demographic for it. You know, and then I get, you know, the hate messages on Instagram like, "Fuck you, rip off of Saw," and it's like, well, you know, this is a different type of world. You know.
That's not a fair.
Those are people that watched the trailer and didn't watch the movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to end on a pretty big question. We had John Krasinski on the show for A Quiet Place 2, and he said something that has always stuck with me. I thought was really interesting. He talked about, because I talked about how you make something scary for someone who stumbles across a movie in 50 years. And he said something he learned on The Office, which is that when you make a genre, you don't think about that genre while you're making it. You don't make a moment to get a laugh. When you're making a horror movie, you don't think about like trying to get a scare. You just try to make a movie that tells the story. And if it scares someone, all the better, awesome. If not, the story's still there. So in that regards, when you're making a movie like this, nowhere in the back of your mind are you thinking about, well, this moment needs to scare the person, or you just tell the story, or how involved with the scares or are those in the back of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, look, the escape room movie probably isn't the best way to explain that answer, but I think what I always try to do when I'm writing something, because I didn't write the escape room movies, is relatability to character. You know, if you're plugged in, we always say if you take the genre stuff out, is the story compelling enough? You know, The Taking of Deborah Logan, it's a woman who has Alzheimer's disease. It's her lesbian daughter who thinks she was rejected, who's trying to take care of her mother. You know, that's a great story already. You know what I mean? Like that push and pull. And if the audience is relating to the leads and you really get them in that story, the drama, the pathos, then the scares work because you care about them. If you don't care about the lead characters, it's like you can do the most whiz bang shit, you know, ever. And the escape room movies are fast and they're furious and they're sort of, you know, I don't want to say that they're cannon fodder, but, you know, ultimately when I'm trying to write something, I really try to get that, what's the human story first, you know, and like James Wan is a master of that. If you watch like the Conjuring movies, they're a family unit. You know, you really just, so when you hear that noise and you do that pan across the room and a door opens up and the little girl is terrified and she's seeing that thing in the black space of her bedroom, you're leaning in because you're like, fuck, I don't want anything to happen to this kid. And so often, even when I'm writing stuff, you know, early on, like you do try to do the sizzle and the scare before you have the heart of the movie. And that's what I always go back to, you know, when I'm developing stuff, is like, do I actually care about these people before the aliens come in or the demon or whatever the hell the thing is, you know?
Sure. I know we're running out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining the Real Blend podcast, Adam, and continued success, man. We can't wait to see what you guys do next. This movie's a lot of fun. The whole franchise is a lot of fun, and I hope it does really well for you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Obviously, we want to thank Sony Pictures Entertainment for giving us time with Adam Robitel. Make sure you check out Escape Room, Tournament of Champions, when it arrives in theaters starting on Friday. Okay, speaking of theaters, box office talk for Black Widow is very strange in the fact that it is split between people who went to the theaters to go check it out, where the film made $80.3 million domestically. But Disney also decided, or Marvel decided, that they were going to also reveal their Disney Plus numbers.
For the first time.
Yes, to let people know that they earned $70 million in revenue from streams on Disney
70
Plus.
or 60?
Was it 60?
Oh, was it 60?
60.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Is that in the notes here? Reportedly $60 million, which means, and then when you factor in the international box office, $158 million in worldwide box office, so that put it at 200 and...
Like 215?
No. Worldwide including, so you can divide that if you want, but it's 80 domestic.
Okay.
Worldwide, including domestic, 158.
150. Oh, so I thought it was over 200, and then plus the 60.
Plus 60, which gets it over 200.
60.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so weird breakdown of the numbers, but I think ultimately, considering the situation, Marvel has to be pretty happy with that. Breaking over $200 million, it's a big number to hit.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's weird because the next big movie that's going to have this kind of theater streaming split is Suicide Squad. Yeah, but you don't pay extra for it on HBO Max. So that's $60 million of instant revenue that goes right to Disney. And, you know, it makes Warner Brothers, I think, reconsider, or, you know, at least regret how they set up their streaming model kind of thing, that they're not getting some sort of influx of cash.
There's a few things that I want to touch on in this regard, because I find it interesting. So, like, back when we've had discussion on the show before about whether or not Disney could have gotten rid of the premiere access aspect of Black Widow and just done a theatrical. We were trying to figure out the legality of that at one point. But after the box office success of F9, which has made like over 530 million worldwide at this point, especially with the opening weekend, when I saw that, I was like, that's going to be weird for Black Widow, because obviously people went out to the theater to see F9, and it made a lot of money in theaters. And I was worried about what was going to happen with Black Widow, because if the box office number wasn't huge, was that going to be like the damning thing where like every article was like, the theaters are over, movie industry is over, movie industry is dead? But, you know, to see an 80-60 split is still really strong. But at the end of the day, I still wonder how much more money it could have made. Because if you think about it, like my anchor in the DC area, his name is Wisdom. He has 5 people in his household. He had the option to go to a theater to see Black Widow and spend per ticket, get concessions. But he's like, you know what? I'm going to spend $30, watch it at home, and save all that money. Sure. How many other people were in that boat? Because if you think about, okay, if Wisdom had gone to the theater and spent the actual theatrical price, it would have obviously cost him more than $30. So that box office total then goes up. You take that one family and multiply it by millions of families across the country. How much more money could have Black Widow have made? So this became an interesting discussion, I think, where I still feel that Disney, if they could have, should have gotten rid of the Disney Plus Premier Access after seeing numbers that we saw for Godzilla vs. Kong, Quiet Place Part 2. There were so many other factors that already told us that people were willing to go to the theater. So I don't know legally if they were able to disconnect that or not after promising it in ads and things like that. But
I'm not sure that Disney's ever going to go back to not having a split. And I'll tell you why. I think they will. But I'll give you one reason why. Well, actually, I'll give you a couple of reasons why. That $80 million earned at the theaters gets split with distributors.
True.
The $60 million on Disney Plus goes all immediately to Disney.
With the caveat, I don't know what it does get split up, because I believe, at least with the Writers Guild, that money is counted as home video, and writers get like a crazy chunk of their what's it called? Dividends. I can't think of the
back
word.
end.
The back end.
The back end comes from home video.
Okay.
So they're considering that home video. So
I believe so. I think it's a sort of thing that's going to come up that it's not 100% black and white. So deals can be
reworked moving forward to factor that in. I would assume.
Yeah. Home video is just a term that makes me feel so nostalgic. It's such a warm blanket of a term.
But the other point that I want to bring up before Kev jumps back in is that I have a relatively old setup downstairs for watching movies. To the point where, like, when I tell you guys I watch stuff on TNT or Sci-Fi or whatever it is,
CP.
it's not that much different than the TV that I'm running stuff through.
Oh God!
If I get a DVD player, I had the ability to enjoy Kevin's setup, right? Which is this. Believe me, it's Kevin and Lauren have invested in a home entertainment system, that is top of the line, and the sound system alone, the sound bar and the wraparound sound, is better than anything I've experienced in a theater anytime soon. So if I had Kevin's sound system, I wouldn't leave the house. I would rent Black Widow and enjoy it more in your living room than I would have gone to theater. Because I'll add this one other thing. I did a double feature in a theater last night at a theater I will not mention here in Charlotte, North Carolina. It looks like it had not been touched in the 3 years since I maybe was last there. And I was saying to Brendan, like, how did they not spend the time when everything was closed to make this look as pristine as possible? Like the experience of going was not this red carpet rollout, welcome back to theaters that I probably in the back of my mind expected to see.
Sure.
And so I was disappointed.
I would say the irony of that, though, is outside of the AMC theaters of the world, which are the big giant chains.
Sure.
Theaters are not going to invest in keeping up their experience or enhancing their experience unless they get the exclusive rights to the movies to show them. Because
100%.
all that's going to tell them is that their market is declining.
Yes.
And there's no reason to spend millions of dollars improving their setup if someone's going to make that choice.
So
ultimately.
Who blinks first, right? Someone has to blink first.
I mean,
I would say the onus is on the studios to support a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah,
in my mind.
Agree with
I believe the artists agree that that's the best way to show their films. Yeah. So
at the end of the day, though, I think there's a very simple solution here. You go here's the thing. We all know that things have changed, right? Streaming is here to stay. It's going to be here. Just shorten your windows. That's all you have to do. I mean, all you have to do is do Black Widow.
Isn't it crazy to you? I mean, to your point, Kevin, A Quiet Place is now available to stream. A Quiet Place 2 is available to stream right now.
A month later.
It came out today. It came out today.
Right.
And you know what's odd? I didn't realize that movies come off of HBO Max. Like, I didn't realize that The Heights was going to disappear.
30 days.
I guess I just wasn't aware of that.
I think Black Widow does too, and I don't know for sure. But for example, we bought Black Widow on the TV because I wanted to watch it again. And I saw on there that I think it's available to all Disney Plus subscribers on October 6th. So I don't know if they're gonna pull that and then bring it back. So, but going back to the shorter windows, I don't understand. To me, this seems like the most logical explanation. You put Black Widow out in theaters for 2 to 3 weeks, give it the exclusive theatrical run, and then you put it in people's homes. I think that's the best compromise ever, because we had a 90-day exclusivity window prior to the pandemic, essentially.
I'm splitting hairs. I think 45 days is the minimum. I feel because I feel like 3 weeks is not enough of a I don't know what the word is. Threat is not the word. It's not enough of a FOMO, like a threat of FOMO for people to be like, oh, I'll wait 3 weeks.
Well, Gabe, in all honesty, I think I loved the 90-day thing because it forced it for that much time.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking about it logically now from like a point of perspective. Okay, if I'm a major studio,
has Disney
what's my
announced
best bet?
Premiere access for anything else after Black Widow?
Yeah, Jungle Cruise is coming Premiere access.
Oof.
Yes.
Premiere access? Is it really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So Jungle Cruise hits theaters and Disney Plus Premiere access on the same day. And to me, that's the kind of film that will probably crush at home because it's family.
Sure. Yeah.
And so this comes down to a big discussion now of what films work in theaters. And it's obviously these gigantic blockbusters. The Suicide Squad thing worries me very much because of the fact that it's basically free with your subscription. Now, we did see Godzilla vs. Kong still crush, which is a good sign. I'm just a little worried. I think at the end of the day, I do think the theaters deserve exclusivity for a certain period of time. I'm cool with Gabe's 45 days. That sounds amazing to me. I don't think it's realistic. I think that we're going to have to be like this, like Quiet Place, like Jake just mentioned. You got it in theaters for a month.
You have evolved. Because you used to at least say, streaming is fine as long as the theater option is still there. Now you want exclusivity. Oh, you said first. You did say even if it was a week. That's true.
Right.
That's true.
All I'm asking for is the first run to be theaters. And if it has to be 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I would love the 45 or 90. I know it's not realistic. Just give the theaters the ability to be the first.
I do think though that there's a larger issue. I agree with the principle of that. And I agree with it from the sense of how we believe the art form should be enjoyed and consumed and shared with others in a shared experience. 100% agree with that. I do think that there is, sort of to what I was saying earlier, there's got to be some sort of threshold where the business owners have to have a certain kind of window or the business fails. You know what I mean? Like, if you only get a week of a movie and every movie is only in your theater for a week, realistically, is that enough to run a business? Or do you need...
keep it.
You can keep it, but if it's not exclusive, then everyone's watching it at home and it no longer matters.
But Black Widow wasn't exclusive and it still made 80.
But Black Widow, we can't hang everything on a Marvel movie.
Sure.
They shit out $1 billion movie with ease 3 times a year.
Hey.
But I just mean
getting
effortless.
Dangerously close to disrespecting
the shitting analogy was not analogous to the quality. It was the amount of effort that
easy it is. Yeah.
Let's get to a conversation about the quality of the latest Marvel movie. Can I
ask a question before you ask that?
Of course you can.
In all honesty, I have one box office point I'd like to make too.
Jesus! I tried to move us on.
In all honesty, how much do you think the domestic opening would have been without Disney Plus Premiere? And you can't say 60 plus because that's one purchase
domestic,
per household.
I think it might have crossed 100, but if so, just barely.
I'm saying
I think
90.
like 150.
No. God.
I think most of the people who rented it would have just chosen not to go.
Yeah.
I don't agree. See, but this goes back to my anchor wisdom. He was going to go to the theater. When I told him he could watch it.
You can't use one case as like a...
No. But also, let me say this.
It's a family.
It's not to say that all 5 of them were going to go. he wanted to go, but once it's a process of getting up and going to the theaters, and I'm telling you from my two boys alone, I couldn't drag Brendan to a free screening of Space Jam because he was just like, it's going to be on HBO Max in a few minutes. Like, your anchor would have maybe gone, and it would have been one ticket. But he might not have gotten the 4 other people to go with him too. They might have been like, I don't really want to go.
No, he makes a point. The reason why I'm bringing him up is he makes a point to go to every Marvel film with his entire family.
Okay.
So like, how many other families out there are like Wisdom, and how much money did they lose? I'm telling you, I think it's a lot more than you think.
I don't think they really lost as much as you think.
What's your box office point?
I would like to say from here on out, I think Disney should be required to report how much they make from Disney Plus Premium. And I don't think they should be allowed to cherry pick if it makes their narrative better.
Well, not just Disney, everyone.
Yeah, everyone, exactly. I mean, like, I think the story outside of the Disney Plus numbers would have been that the weekend was incredibly front-loaded, that a majority of the Marvel money for Black Widow came on Friday, which is usually not a good sign for week 2 whenever a weekend is that front-loaded. But that narrative got lost in the Disney Plus numbers, and I think they knew exactly what they were doing in that regard. And so I think they should not be allowed to release them for this movie, but we're not really going to release them for that movie, because then that sets a really dangerous precedent to the point where, like, they're basically telling us what to report as journalists. And so that would be my main point coming out of this, is like, okay, like, you've set the precedent. You now told us that you can get the numbers that quickly, so I want them for every movie that you put on Disney Plus from here on out, whether it's a success or a failure.
And those headlines definitely felt very narrative driven. Like it was like 80 domestic, 60 million. It was a very, I mean, for me, it was very positive to read those numbers, right? It was cool to see those large numbers again. But I agree with Jake. It's like Netflix picks and chooses what numbers they release, you know. And this is obviously the first time that Disney Plus released it. So what? Other than Black Widow, what other films had this release that they didn't release numbers for? So Mulan,
Raya and the Last Dragon, Cruella. Was a rental.
Isn't that interesting that we never got those? So obviously, do we just assume they weren't good? They didn't do well?
Yeah, sure. Not well enough to change the story the way they needed it to change.
Well, I think that Marvel needed that weekend number to be big somehow, you know.
Yes.
So they were going to pad as many revenues as possible to say, "Hey, look, we came back with this." So, one of the factors I think hurting this film in particular is that we're talking about a Black Widow prequel movie and not Endgame. Like, if this was Endgame, we're having a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
So I want to start with Jake, and this is going to be our spoiler-free version of the chat. Before we get into any kind of specific spoilers, I will let everybody know, and you can skip forward if you haven't yet seen Black Widow. So, Jakey, give us an overall big picture feel about where you are on the Black Widow movie.
I think, on average, it was okay. And the reason I think it was okay is because I really, really liked the first 2 acts, the first 2/3. Like, very grounded. Kevin nailed it when he sort of compared that very grounded reality to sort of the Winter Soldier, which I very much liked. I loved the family dynamic. Thought the performances were great. I thought the last act, I was bored to tears in the last, like just clawing my eyes out, like, oh my God, I just want this movie to be over. Like the 20-minute, what felt like a 20-minute long, like Ray Winstone, James Bond villain, I'm going to give you my entire plan sort of scene. And like, basically once they got to the Red Room, I checked out. I thought it was a completely just missed opportunity there. And then also, I think the biggest thing going against this movie is that the Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, is the least interesting character in her own movie. Like, I think everyone else in the movie is infinitely like far more fun to watch than she is. And I just don't, you know, and I know that the thing that we've been talking about is when this movie should have come out. I don't know how much you can hold that against the movie, but I'm still not, even if it had come out in that Captain Marvel spot right before Endgame, I'm not sure it would have made me like the movie anymore. I don't know, Gabe, what are you
I just want to earmark for when we're in spoilers. I want to discuss your point about her being the least interesting character in the film, because I can't discuss that. I can't give my thoughts on that without spoiling stuff. So I'm earmarking that for later.
In a non-spoiler way, I think what you're referring to, I think characters enhanced Natasha and Black Widow, but we can go into that in the spoiler discussion.
Let's do a roundtable of reactions, and then we'll dive into spoilers to give people a warning.
Kev, where are you?
You want to continue on?
Yeah, give a star rating out of 5, Jake.
3. I would do a 3 out of 5. I'd put it middle of the pack Marvel. but I'd have to really sit down and like rank them to determine if it's top half or bottom half.
Okay.
It's middle half, but I'm not sure which side of the coin I'm landing on with it.
Kev, where are you?
It's so interesting. Like this is one where I feel like it's middle, but it's pushing upward. I think for me, in terms of this film, like as Jake was mentioning, I rewatched it the other day, and I still feel the same way I did. The first 2 acts of this film are phenomenal. Like the pacing is unbelievably great. Like the opening scene is amazing. Right into that "Smells Like Teen Spirit" cover in the credits.
Yes,
right into the. I thought Harbor and Rachel Weisz's scenes with the younger kids was incredible. So all moving into Natasha and Yelena meeting again. Their fight scene in the kitchen, absolutely incredible. Very Winter Soldier, very brutal, very grounded. And then moving forward to the car chase. And obviously the car chase scene has a very Winter Soldier aspect to it as well. And I think the movie was firing on all cylinders for me, even into the Windstone stuff, which we can dive into in the spoiler discussion. It's the third act free fall that I can't buy into. Now, that being said, that's, I don't know how long that scene was, 10, 15 minutes, the actual free falling action down to the bottom and whatever that was. But I felt that scene was not the same movie I was just watching prior. But also, if you think about it, Winter Soldier goes into a huge CGI fest at the end too, right?
Sure.
With the whole thing with Redford and so it's typically a Marvel move to jump extreme in the third act. But I actually really enjoyed it. It was better than I thought it was going to be, and I was worried about the emotional stakes. How am I going to care for a character that I know dies in a few years later? It still worked for me. And to me, Florence Pugh really kind of made Scarlett's performance. Those two together, I thought were phenomenal. So I enjoyed it. It's just that I do have some of the same problems Jake does. They just didn't affect me as much.
All right. I watched it twice, sort of back to back. Like I watched it with Peach one night and then with the group the next night. And I was dangerously close to going 4 out of 5 out of this movie. 4.5 out of 5. I'm sorry, 4.5. I was that far along in it. I really, really loved it. And I think the big thing that sets me apart from you two guys is that I can get a lot of that gritty, street level car chases fights out of Bourne and Bond and all these other franchises. I want Marvel to go above and beyond. I want them to have a sequence where a floating base is falling apart and spies are fighting in the air. Like that's
fine. It has to look good, though. It has to look great.
But I think the majority of that looks really good. I can't defend the parachute scene. It looks atrocious. But I think the majority of that, from a comic book standpoint, looks really good. I thought they did a great job of sort of coordinating those action set pieces. Yes, it's hard to argue that Scarlett is not the least interesting character in the ensemble. Rachel Weisz is not well cast in this movie.
Oh, I love her in this.
I thought she was okay. So I liked Harbor and I liked Florence Pugh, and I thought Scarlett. It's so weird because in the grand scheme of her legacy here, like she's always has to be part of a bigger ensemble.
Well, they make jokes about like the main ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, they
Florence
do.
Pugh says something about like the main ones,
yeah.
and then Natasha says, "Wait, what do you mean the main ones?"
Yeah, but doesn't that reflect a little bit what like the MCU audience kind of feels like, whether it's fair or not? That's a kind of the perspective of her. Kate Shortland is just. It's weird when they hire somebody like Chloe Zhao as an example for Eternals, or Kate Shortland for this. They're not action directors. Their background is not in action. And I think what happens with the Marvel movies is that they direct up to a certain point and they hand it over to a team of stunt coordinators and fight choreographers and second unit directors that handle most of this stuff. And Marvel kind of ensures that like all their stuff is going to look a little bit the same, unless you're somebody like the Russos who's going to really put your fingerprint on it and say like, no, we're doing it this way kind of thing. So I think Black Widow falls a little bit into that. So I ended up falling back to a 4, just because of what the movie is. It is a prequel. It doesn't have the ability to really move the story forward all that much. We'll get to the end credit scene in the spoiler conversation. So it gave a good adventure movie to a character who I really liked, but that's what it kind of is. It's its own little standalone piece that's just going to be part of the MCU as a whole. I do agree with the people who keep saying that it should have come probably after Civil War.
Yeah.
But if Marvel gets dinged because their planning didn't allow them to completely get everything as seamlessly as possible, fine. Then it is what it is. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to transition now into full-on spoiler talk.
Transition.
Thank you very much for that, Jake. And if you want to jump forward to the next section, Gabe will mark it on both the podcast and the YouTube channel. So now we can talk full spoilers. Kev, give me all the details.
The only thing I wanted to say was I think the entire film, at least until that free fall sequence, which we can now openly talk about, spent the entire movie telling us that Black Widow's a human being, right?
Okay.
And they the entire time she can be hurt, she takes punches and she falls and she's feeling those punches. And to me, what I loved about the first 2 acts of this film were that I felt like I was watching a human being who just happens to be an Avenger, right? And then when they really went to that 3rd act and the free falling started to happen, I lost the touch of that human aspect.
I can see that.
And I think for me to set up an entire film that grounds, because the reason why I like this film is because of the emotional element of it. It's genuinely grounded. Like, there are some scenes where they're talking about what happened to them as kids when they went to Ray Winstone, and like they get into some graphic detail about what happened to them and how they're not able to have children. And like all these moments, they feed into this idea of we're watching human beings who just happen to be superheroes.
Yeah.
When you go into that free fall, I lost that. Like that moment was like, you spent an entire movie doing this and now she's falling out of the sky. And to me, it was almost a bit of that mixture didn't work for me. I wish that final scene was a little less CGI heavy. That's all.
I haven't seen it more than once, but I mean, I get that there was more involved with debris and stuff and it was, it was marveled up. But to me, that scene just it didn't feel like anything more than Ethan Hunt did. You know what I mean? Like that didn't stand out to me.
We gotta stop bringing Mission Impossible.
But you get no. This is more relevant because he literally jumped out of a plane.
Yeah, but Ethan Hunt's skydive and Fallout is so much less complicated and convoluted. It's a very simple 1-person, 2-person fall, and you can follow it all. I felt like this was like, where do I look? Like it's almost like
but it's a superhero movie. I get that she's not a superhero, but like,
sure,
it didn't stand out to me. Is all I'm saying. I'm not criticizing your point because I'm saying I've only seen it once. For me, that scene worked for me. It didn't stick out.
It's not that I didn't hate the scene. It just felt out of place compared to, like, if you compare the kitchen fight and the driving sequence to that scene. But it's almost like different.
I just found it to be boring.
It's the climax of the movie, though. If the climax of the movie was like a fist fight in a room, we'd kind of be let down, though. Wouldn't we be having the opposite conversation?
But Winter Soldier has a sky action scene, and I thought the Russos handled that well. Like with the whole thing with Bucky and Steve in the whatever that floating thing was in the sky.
But you might give it a pass because Steve has powers. Possible that you give that a pass because he has powers.
Because you can buy into it. At the end of the day, we've seen Black Widow do things that are not human, in terms of like action. But when you spend a whole movie building her human character, then you take her up to that like non-human aspect. It's disconnected.
You know what she can't do is survive a fall from a cliff in Vormir.
See, what you just brought the whole thing down.
Spoiler alert, man. Just okay, do you guys find that the my one spoiler sort of nitpick is that the Budapest joke is just a little weird to me now that we know that they're talking about killing a kid. Like the whole like, you and I remember Budapest very differently.
Do you think they were
that time we killed a child? That's what they were doing.
Was that in Budapest?
Yeah,
I thought they just had a different thing in Budapest.
I don't remember that.
The Budapest thing is...
Because remember she talked about like, we had to hide here for 2 days after we...
that was there.
When you're talking about they wiped out Ray Winstone's daughter? Yeah. That happened in Budapest? Is that why they were getting attacked by all the people?
I thought that's what that's
Budapest,
what her... That's Budapest. That's what her and Jeremy Renner were doing there. That's them in Budapest.
Truthfully, I thought that I thought that there was going to be an explanation that said like, no, of course she didn't kill it. And it's not that of course she didn't kill the child. It's like, she did try to kill the child. The child just survived.
But she pushed the button full blown thinking that I'm going to kill this young child. And so that's kind of what they're talking about when they say like, you and I remember Budapest differently. Like, It's a weird joke now.
Yeah. That's a big, but that's one of the moments when I was texting and was not spoiling stuff because Jake hadn't seen it yet, that like it's an adult movie. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
A different MCU movie would be like, oh, she accidentally killed a kid and she's dealing with the grief of it. This is like she chose to kill a kid for the greater good, but see, for what she thought was right. I thought and for herself.
Civil War did a better job of handling the like, hey, sometimes civilians have to die if we're going to do this kind of thing. Because they've done that before, and it's a very interesting theme to take, and obviously Batman vs. Superman touched on that as well. It's one of my favorite sort of like more adult themes that this genre has picked up on in the past few years, and they could have done it better here and have done it better in the past.
It was more personal here. The Tony thing was like, if I'm remembering correctly, was kind of like the concept as a whole of their place as superheroes or whatever and what they do. To me, it felt like they made it much more personal to her. Obviously, when you get to the reveal of Taskmaster, it felt much more narrow than that, than of her just sort of debating the idea of collateral damage. It was about this specific instance. One thing I wanted to touch on that earmark of kind of a two points. One, you mentioned that she's kind of the least interesting character, and then Sean, I think you said it's one of the points that's kind of been made broadly, which is that it should have come whenever it's set in the timeline. But I think they do enough in this to make me disagree with that, or to at least justify it, in the sense that I still enjoyed it as a Black Widow story, but the other characters are more interesting because those are the characters that we're going to continue to see. The potential to see, at least. We're going to keep seeing Florence Pugh. And I think when you get to the end credit scene, the Black Widow in the title Black Widow is now her. Like it's a passing of the baton, and I think it coming right now, it to me it justified its existence when it was released versus being back then. Like what would have happened with Florence Pugh? Following that, like what she was just going to show up all of a sudden with the other team.
Right.
I thought the end credits scene was so well done. Like that was like I loved that passing of the torch, the way they did that, and kind of like I'm actually more interested in to see what's going to happen with Renner.
And I can't wait for that face off. How great is it that this whole Marvel TV show thing we've been talking about is how far is Marvel going to take it? How important are these going to be? And you kind of really need to have seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier in order to get whatever the hell what she was doing in this movie, right?
Yes, but this movie was supposed to...
Yeah, this movie was supposed to be her debut, right?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so you don't need to have seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Well, it makes more sense in the grand scheme if you realize that she's essentially putting together her own sort of team. Because Yelena, it's implied, has been working with her for a while.
Yeah.
They already have a relationship, and now... Valentina, we're talking about Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character.
Thank you, yes.
Is recruiting U.S. agent played by Wyatt Russell, and is putting together a team. The team theoretically is probably going to be called the Thunderbolts. And there's a character, General Thunderbolt Ross, played by William Hurt, who I think got underutilized in this movie because he's in it very briefly. And it's part of it's the first two acts are very Bourne to me, like he's deceiving the people who are chasing him. He's somewhere else and kind of spying on them. But in terms of building out other stuff that's going to affect stuff going on down the line, I felt a little bit more about this movie as sometimes you guys have said about the TV shows, which is, are they going to have an impact on the MCU at all moving forward? And to me, the only scene that stood out was that end credit scene about like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to push the story forward in a way. Now, I liked Yelena a lot as a character, and so I do want to see where she goes with it. I hope she just doesn't mimic what Scarlett was. I hope that she actually becomes something totally different in terms of how
already
she plays
totally
it.
Different, though. I think. I think Scarlett, the way that she played Black Widow was a very cold. She wasn't cold. She has very warm moments, and that's kind of her whole arc is us learning more about her from being a kind of side character. Yelena, I think, from the drop, like the quote where she's like, that would be a cool way to die. She's a much more dynamic character. She's a much more exciting and fun, quippy kind of character that they can play with moving forward.
Her making fun of the poses was great. Like, and she even like tried one and was like,
where like Black Widow's best quip, which is not a criticism, she's just not that kind of character. Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow's best quip was like, are we still friends? Like that's like the most we got in the middle of a fight, you know?
But I like her presence in the Avengers, and I think she's a very interesting character in that sense, but I do agree that Florence's character seems to be more dynamic in that sense, and I'm actually really excited to see what she does going forward. To be honest with you, I actually really want to see that. With the moment the movie ended, and it's funny because like I haven't been super stoked about Phase 4 moving forward. I'm very excited about Doctor Strange, but at the end of Black Widow, it was the first time in a long time in my body that I was like, oh, I can't wait to see Florence Pugh and Renner meet and have that exchange. How is he going to explain what happened? Is she going to believe him? I'm all in on that.
Is that going to happen in his series, or is that going to happen?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a series thing, not a movie thing?
Comes out later this year.
Yeah, I would say Hawkeye.
Hawkeye's coming to Disney Plus.
Do we know that Pugh? Do we know that Pugh?
I think she is in it. Yeah,
she's in it.
Okay. So all right, so clearly they'll meet in this. See, that pisses me off. I want that to be in a movie.
I think part of the reason I didn't super love that post-credit scene is I just sort of thought like, okay, like I'll watch that on Disney Plus.
Oh, see, that's exactly that's a problem. No, we're not jaded. I think at the end of the day, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like to me, all right.
Can I offer a suggestion though of why I say this? If we get 20, let's say in the next 5 years from now they're still going strong and they keep making series at the clip that they are, you won't feel that way. It's just different. And I think once you get used to it, you'll have an expectation for this, you'll have an expectation for that. I don't think it'll feel as disappointing as you just made.
Yeah, but it will be a lower expectation.
Yes, and
I don't know if that's necessarily true. Loki's great.
Loki's very good. Loki's very good. But I will say this: the moment I hit play on Black Widow, I saw an immediate shift in production.
Sure. Okay, I'll tell you.
From Falcon and WandaVision, it is so far beyond that production scale. The fact that they would actually continue that amazing Florence and Renner conversation in a series, to me, sounds like they're like sidelining it. That's an MCU movie narrative.
I agree with you to this extent. There was a moment in the opening sequence of Black Widow where David Harbour's on the wing of that plane, and they kind of tilt it one way, and he rolls from one side of the thing to the other. And I turned to PJ and I said, well, Marvel movies just hit differently, like the action is just the movies are better. But here's my defense. I think the TV shows are still so early in their production cycle that they'll get better. They're going to figure out how to do these movies, how to do these series.
They feel minor league though. They like Black Widow feels major league. Loki is actually approaching major league, especially in episodes 4 and 5. I'm actually digging that. But WandaVision and Falcon, no offense to those shows, they were minor league shows.
But listen, I'll tell you what's even more minor league was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was an ABC sitcom. And now we got the Disney Plus shows, which I think are a step up, and I think they're only going to evolve as they go forward. I think. I hope.
I mean, to Gabe's point, Loki has won me over. Once Sylvie came into the picture in episode 3, and now we're on 4 and 5, and we had the Richard E. Grant stuff and Alligator and basically the Groot character of the Loki storyline. I started getting excited. Honestly, watching Loki at home when we got to episode 4 and 5, that felt like Marvel Cinematic Universe movie production level. But to Sean's point, Harbor on the side of that airplane, had that been done on a television show, would not have looked anywhere near as good. Like that, Sean, I agree with you. I actually paid attention to that shot the other day when I rewatched it. It looks really good. Like Harbor looks like he's actually on the side of an airplane hanging off it. And there's no like bad blue screen or green screen. And I think to your point, and I agree with you, Gabe, I think that they're figuring out the series stuff and it'll eventually hopefully get to that level. Loki is approaching that. Loki does feel like that now. I see Feige on screen there. But I don't know. Do you guys really think that the Renner Pugh moment should happen on TV?
I don't think that that's a thing anymore. I don't think it's TV. It's streaming.
I honestly feel like I know what like they're gonna fight and there's gonna be a misunderstanding and then she's gonna believe him. Like I feel like I can already see how this is gonna play out in Hawkeye.
Does she kill Hawkeye off?
Well,
I hope so.
I heard someone say, "What if? Because what she says is your next target."
Yeah.
And what if that wording is not meant to be she's supposed to go kill them? What if she's just supposed to go recruit him for this new team? And that's
because Hawkeye was a member of the Thunderbolts, actually.
So it might not even be confrontational necessarily.
But Florence leaves that scene in anger, for sure. Like that's how I felt that scene was. Like
she was pissed off.
She has a line that says like, "Do you want to get back at the person who did this to your sister?"
And he
She
shows
does
her
that
the
a lot.
photo.
Get back? Oh, okay.
Yeah, like to me, the way that scene played for me was that at the end of that scene, I am ready for a Yelena and Clint fight sequence. And I am ready for that moment.
But Jake, to what you said, I mean, yeah, it's a giant superhero movie. Like, yeah, of course, you know what's gonna happen. Like, that's kind of.
Yeah, but like
we've been through
I
20-something
don't
movies.
think that's
me.
something that like we should just like. There are ways to do this.
Well, then maybe they
which
won't.
we
Maybe
don't
they'll
know.
surprise you.
I hope so.
Sure.
I hope so. I listen. I want these Marvel series to be great, but at the end of the day, nothing I've seen in the Marvel series so far has impacted me emotionally.
Yeah, but that's like
about
saying you
the
get to.
MCU.
That's like saying you get to Thor and you're not convinced of the MCU. You know what I mean? Like that's like saying
No,
you
I was
get
convinced that Iron
to
Man 1, man.
Iron Man 2, okay. But you get my
I was
point.
convinced. On
Look at Iron Man
Yeah.
2 and look at Endgame, and that's what you're comparing these two.
But Gabe, do you agree the production jump from TV to
but
movie
yes.
it's absurd how crazy the jump is.
But I think that's just logistics that they'll figure out if it becomes...
And money. They're spending far more money on the film.
That's my point. Like think about these first few series, they were like, not necessarily a blind bet, but they were like, hey, here's our initial investment. Here's the amount of money that we're willing to spend to see if this pays off.
I'll put it into a context that I totally understand. Like, I get what Kevin's saying. If they told me that No Way Home was going to be a Disney Plus series, like Spider-Man No Way Home, there'd be a part of me that would be like, shit.
Right.
No, I get it. I get that. I'm just talking about moving forward. They keep getting better, and I think that that like they're always going to be lesser than is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Loki's
Look at how many great Netflix
5.
series that we love that we think are better than giant dramatic movies that come out. You know, like
I'm starting to go towards that path because of the last 2 episodes of Loki. I'm starting to see as we're branching towards it.
We're recording this before that finale drops. It's really going to be interesting to see if it sticks to the landing.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about that.
Dude,
okay,
that's
I'm going to
crucial.
throw something out there.
We need
I'm
we need a Sylvie Elena fight scene, by the way. How cool!
Oh wait,
would
no,
that...
but in Hawkeye, they're introducing one of his proteges. Her name is Kate Bishop, and it's played by Haley Steinfeld, which I think is really good casting. So
yeah.
Dude, imagine a Yelena
she's
Sylvie scene.
And she's a movie star, so we're assuming she's going to be in the movie. You know?
What are you saying? A Renner isn't?
No, my point is, well, that's different. This is all movie
He's
stars
a
coming in.
recording artist, for God's sake.
All right, Jake, go ahead. You've been trying to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I'm curious as to how you guys feel when I say the following statement. It's 100% true. I have not loved a Marvel project, like truly, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, loved it top to bottom since Infinity War.
That's just wrong.
I loved Endgame, but I'm not too far off from where you are.
Right. Okay. So we're one or two movies. Like we're not that far. Like truly loved.
Truly loved.
As opposed to like I liked Far From Home.
Did you love?
You loved Far From
Home
when we watched it.
Far From Home.
Oh wait! I loved Far From Home. I forgot that came out after Endgame. So forgive me. I clarify. So my last love of an MCU film
so
is Far
Jake,
From Home.
hold on for a few more months until No Way Home.
A few
comes
more
out.
months, and yeah.
I do love Far From
I didn't.
Home.
Okay, but my
It's
point,
amazing.
I didn't love Far From Home. I liked Far From Home, but I didn't love Far From Home. Infinity War is the last Marvel project I loved.
But you're so wrong about Endgame. Like that boils down to you being wrong about Endgame.
Jake, I love you. You are wrong about Endgame. You're
so wrong about
I
it.
rewatched Endgame the other day. It is outstanding.
Ask me what happened when I rewatched Endgame. Couldn't finish it.
Wait a second, dude.
So would you say
me.
you're mid game?
Whenever I get in an Endgame mood, I just YouTube like the last fight. That's what I do.
This week in movies, there's a movie called Pig, which I don't know much about, but Jake is excited to see.
Oh my god, I want to see it so badly.
Nicolas Cage? Is it Nicolas Cage movie?
Yeah, and
What does it
apparently
say?
great Nicolas, like pristine Nick Cage is back, baby.
What is it? What is it? A period movie?
So he apparently is and I aside from watching the trailer once, I haven't taken too much of a deep dive because I kind of want to be surprised by it. But he is sort of a guy that lives out in the wilderness alone. He has a pig that hunts truffles. And for like upscale, high class, I think like Pacific West Coast restaurants. And someone comes in and takes his pig.
Okay.
And in the trailer, you see him like kind of do this like almost like a Taken. It for a moment you think it's gonna be Taken, where like I will find you kind of thing. But then also like it looks like he is someone or was someone because he shows up at these like super high class restaurants And of course, like they don't want anything to do with this guy, and then the people start going like, "Do you know who this guy is?" Like apparently, like he very much runs in this upper class of it. And it looks like it just touches on so many different worlds. And then also, I am so in for like great Nick Cage and Nick Cage that dives in. So I am 110% into this movie. I very much cannot wait to see it.
Okay. There's a movie called Die in a Gunfight, which is opening limited. I saw the trailer for this.
That would be a cool way to die.
And it struck me as a kind of throwback to 90s era Go and Boondock Saints and all those ones that sort of were inspired by Tarantino. I have not seen Die in a Gunfight, but I have seen Gunpowder Milkshake, which is coming to some theaters, including the New Beverly, where it's going to be played on 35mm film, and Netflix. And this is Karen Gillan's film. It's her answer to John Wick, essentially. It also stars Carla Gugino and Michelle Yeoh and Angela Bassett, and one other actress who I'm forgetting.
Gugino, I believe is how you say her last
name. Carla
Gugino. And one of the actors who plays Karen Gillan's mom, who I'm blanking on now.
Oh, Lena Headey.
Thank you very much. Who else has seen it? Kev, you saw it?
I saw it, yeah.
Jake, you saw? Oh, everybody's seen it?
Everybody else saw it.
I was really disappointed in it. I thought it was going to be... It has one of the best trailers I've seen, because I went back and rewatched the trailer yesterday because I was trying to pull screen grabs out of it to run for our stories. That trailer is cut perfectly. And the trailer, Paul Giamatti shows up in it. Like, it's one of those movies where you're like, oh, this is going to be great, because everyone who has a scene is going to really crush the hell out of it. I can't put my finger on what went wrong, but I don't know if it's just paced wrong or edited wrong or something, but it never caught me up in the story. Like, it always just felt like a rip-off of so many other films.
Yeah, but it ripped off a lot of movies without seeming to understand what made the movies it was ripping off great.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You know, like it definitely, like it, you know, it's John Wick meets Kill Bill. Really, you know, would love to be Tarantino, but seems like the filmmaker, the editor, the writer didn't seem to understand like what is it about those movies that are so awesome to us, other than, you know, kind of the basic core plot, the general principle of you know, the structure of the movie.
Right.
Yeah, I was incredibly disappointed, and again, you know, for me, boredom is such like a weird complaint to say, but like in movies where you should absolutely positively beyond measured not be bored, that's when I tend to bring that complaint in. Like I used that word for F9 a couple of weeks ago, because that is not a movie that you should be bored in. So the only time I ever bring out like the word like boredom as like an actual true legit criticism are in movies where that's the last thing you should possibly be. I should not have been as bored in this movie as I was. And it's also, it's just weird. It's weirdly toothless is a word I would use to describe it.
Which again, watching the trailer makes it seem so badass.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a moment where Carla Gugino is saying, like, she turns to the little girl who they're all protecting and says, like, put these on, these headphones, because I'm going to make a little bit of noise. And then she whips out this gigantic, you know, machine gun. And that trailer, that moment in the trailer plays like gangbusters.
Yeah.
And in the movie, it doesn't. And I can't figure out why. It's just so weird that something about watching it is like, I don't know if it's taking itself too seriously. Because there's moments that if you describe on paper, they would sound amazing. Like there's a whole fight sequence in a hallway where Karen Gillan has her arm dead, you know, because she got a shot in the arm from one of the villains. Scene. It's fun, but I still feel like some reason it should have been cooler, and I just don't. I can't fully explain why this movie didn't work for me. Did you like it more than us, Kev?
I liked it a little bit more than you guys did. I actually thought, and I don't disagree with the idea that the trailer is worlds beyond the film. Like, the trailer is a masterclass. It's like the Suicide Squad trailer for the Air film but the film itself isn't as bad as Air's movie ended up being. Yeah. I genuinely believe that it's forgettable. Did I enjoy watching it? It's interesting. The bored aspect of Jake that brings up is interesting, because I wasn't bored, but I was uninterested in the action at times. And like the way it was cut together in the trailer was so much more interesting than it was in the film. That being said, I thought Karen Gillan was great in the role. There are fight scenes in this film that are worth seeing. There's a bowling alley oneer that is unbelievable. The dead arm scene I thought was really cool. You know, there are scenes that I really dug. I thought Giamatti was good in the role. I thought Lena Headey was good in the role. I actually appreciated the mother-daughter aspect of it. It's so funny because I've seen it. It was a couple weeks ago that I saw it, and now that I'm like rehashing it in my mind, I think I do like it more than I thought I did. I mean, I think it's a solid action film. Is it it's nowhere near as good as the movies it's paying homage to, obviously. And I think, and there's so many other better films that have played with this idea. The John Wick aspect obviously is there. You know, the Atomic Blondes and the what's the other one? Nobody.
With John Wick, the thing that this movie tries to do is build on the world in a weird kind of way. Like the idea of a library as a place you can go to.
Same world, basically, as John Wick. It feels like John Wick, yeah.
But even, I'm going to throw out an example, the Kid Detective did a better job of building its world.
I love Kid Detective.
And making it quirky and weird, you know, that this movie tried to do that, but missed. It just missed.
Well, at the same time, like, the way John Wick builds its world is so much better than the way Gunpowder Milkshake builds its world. I mean, and kind of what you were saying just now, like, I'm more interested when I'm playing around in the world with John Wick. I like when he walks into the hotel and talks to, is it Lance Reddick? Who's at the front desk? Like that to me felt more interesting. But at the same time, I did dig the Karen Gillan story. I dug the backstory. I dug the mother aspect of it. I thought the action scenes were good enough to watch. I mean, I would give the movie a 3.5. I liked it, I think, significantly more than you guys did, but I didn't love it. So I'm kind of in a weird place where I do recommend it because I think it has some really cool action set pieces. And I think performance-wise, it is worth seeing, especially for the bowling alley oneer. That shot is awesome. And I'm not saying a scene makes the movie worth seeing, but I don't think people are going to be disappointed if they watched it. But if you watch the trailer before it, it's definitely a downshift. From the tone of the trailer. Yeah.
I'm going to get to Escape Room Tournament of Champions so that we can all dive into Space Jam: A New Legacy. I've had fun with both of these escape room movies so far. I didn't expect to. They're kind of just, you know, these one-off horror franchises where these people get themselves trapped in an escape room. There's a bigger mythology going on, not quite a Saw level mythology, but there's some sort of gamesmanship that there's a person who's funding all of these things. And there are reasons why these people are getting trapped in the rooms and being selected to participate in these games. I thought that the traps in the first movie were very fun, very creative. And going into this movie, they obviously realized, like, okay, the first one made a ton of money. Let's put that money back into production for this one because the rooms that the people get trapped in are off the charts entertaining. Like, one is a recreation of a subway car. And it's a weird game of like Hangman that they have to find all these different letters around the subway car. And every time that they get the wrong letter, they get shocked. And it plays really well. This concept of the Tournament of Champions is really fun because when you meet all the people who were playing in the new movie, in the story of the movie, you learn that in a Hunger Games kind of way, there have been other escape room tournaments at other places around the world, and these are the people who managed to survive that one. So now all the survivors are playing against each other. I think they're doing a pretty good job of building out this mythology. Now, you know, it could go off the rails completely if they keep trying to make them, but so far, over the course of these first two, I have found them to be pretty entertaining as long as you know what you're going into. So I think Escape Room Tournament of Champions is worth going in, seeing in a theater. It's got some pretty good kills. It's got some pretty good scares, and the rooms themselves are worth kind of going to. So this brings us to Space Jam: A New Legacy, which is going to be available in theaters and also on HBO Max. And I don't know, where do we want to start? Let's start with Jake. You saw it? You haven't seen it?
No.
All right, Kev, you go first on Space Jam: A New Legacy because you liked it.
No, liked it Let me expand on that a little bit.
Okay, please do.
Okay. The first Space Jam is great for what it was. I enjoyed it. What is it, like an 85, 90-minute movie, or however long that film was. I still appreciate it today. We did a rewatch on our show. The animation still holds up. I actually find the animation in the first one to be even more impressive because it's, you know, the whole hand-drawn aspect of it mixed in with the live action is pretty amazing. I'm not saying the animation here doesn't look good, but I think the technology has gotten to a point where it's not as impressive, I guess I would say. This movie's too long. It's 35 minutes way too long. I would argue.
It's 2 full hours.
It's two full hours. The first half of the film I didn't dig. I thought that LeBron was flat. I didn't find there was an energy to him. He didn't feel like he wanted to be there in the first half. But then once the second half ramped up and we got into the game itself, which is in the trailer, not spoiling anything, when you get to the actual game, that's when it amped up for me. I actually thought LeBron amped himself up there too. There's actually a moment in the film where I felt like he turned into a better actor. And because he already did great work in Trainwreck. I thought Judd Apatow got a great performance out of him. When this movie begins, his first lines aren't good. Like, there are like moments where I was just like, what is going on? This guy is actually, I think, a legitimately good actor from the terms of Trainwreck. I was expecting a little more from him, and it just felt flat. Once the second half hits, then I started to really enjoy it. They spend way too much time with Don Cheadle's character in the beginning and the algae rhythm aspect of it. But then with the game, I was all in. It's too long. First half isn't as good as the second half. I'm kind of middle in the road. I did not hate it as much as Sean did, and Sean can kind of get into the term if he hated it or not. It is a very big ad for Warner Brothers, like, clearly at the end of the day. I think Sean will touch on that. It feels a little shameless, or what's the word I'm looking for? Soulless. I mean, there are times where you feel like you're being advertised to about the Warner Brothers catalog. It almost doesn't feel like they're naturally bringing in. Now that I'm talking about it more, the more I kind of dislike it.
They're not at all, dude. They're not at all.
But there are.
Well, let me just say, we had a conversation on the site.
I haven't actually vocalized this yet out. So
we had a conversation on the site today where someone pitched a list and it was like X Warner Brothers references that you might have missed in Space Jam. And I was like, you're not going to miss any of them. No. They are all smash you over the head obvious.
So here's the thing. So the second half of the film I liked. So that's kind of where I'm, as you can tell in my vocalization of my review that I'm doing right now for the first time. This is the first time I vocalized my thoughts in this film. So bear with me in terms of my jumping back and forth. It's a mixed bag for me. There are things in there I liked. I thought LeBron got better throughout the film. The animation is incredible once you get to the actual basketball game. I actually liked, and I don't know if Sean liked these scenes or not. These are in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. They actually jump into physical live action scenes from the Warner Brothers catalog. So we jump into like Mad Max. We jump into, The Matrix.
Casablanca.
Yeah, there's some. I kind of dug the way they played around with that. So for me, but at the same time, I also understand where Sean's about to come from about it being just a gigantic ad for Warner Brothers. So I didn't dislike it as much as Sean did, but I also understand where you're about to come from. I'm kind of in a mixed.
Can I, as someone who hasn't seen it, can I interject a quick thought? I'm curious as to your thoughts. Like, we know what movies are Warner Brothers, and we understand the idea that if it's in this, it's because they own. Does the average person, like, are they going to see this and make the connection that all of the products are Warner Brothers? Like that?
No,
like,
Jake, they tell you.
Oh shit! Okay, never mind. I'm sorry. I take that back.
Over again.
I'm sorry.
They literally say Warner Brothers. I think they might say Warner Brothers. The actual term Warner Brothers. Yeah. They might say those two words
100 times,
15, 20 times.
All right, never. I take it back.
Yes.
The world that Don Cheadle lives in is called the Warner Brothers serververse.
Yes.
It's like that's what it's called.
Yes.
And
why didn't they call it HBO Max? Wouldn't he be in HBO Max?
I guess so.
I don't know.
But that's the thing. Like, the references to those movies are, I don't think, aimed at kids at all. Like,
no.
When they go into Casablanca. When they go in, like, there's a lengthy Mad Max reference.
Which I thought was cool.
One of the Looney Tunes characters is, like, spraying the stuff in his mouth.
That was cool.
And I was like, what kid? I looked at Brendan to see if he was even going to... Oh, you liked it, but this is a movie aimed at kids. They have no clue what this is.
But at the same time, it's like Pixar, right? So, like, there are things in Soul that I got that a 12-year-old kid might not got. So, if you think about it from a perspective of a parent, if they're going to see Space Jam, I get the Matrix and the Mad Max stuff. It's like the parent can have fun with it, but also the kid doesn't necessarily need to know the scene as much as we do. But dude, seeing LeBron in like Mad Max getup, that was kind of fun. I'm sorry, I like that scene.
But I'll get to a point where they went over the top for me.
Okay, all right.
That's not even first off, the fact that this is a 2-hour commercial, not just for the Warner Brothers catalog, but for LeBron James also. Like, I don't know how many times I need to be told how great LeBron is at basketball. I get it. Like, there's an endless stream of references to the amount of things that LeBron has accomplished. Right. Totally fine. I get it, right? But beyond that, and again, I think LeBron was not good in this. I think he's... you
don't think he got better in the second half? I thought he got better in the second half.
I know the moment you're talking about, and I know when he comes out, he gets more fun. Yes, fine. But that's like the last 10 minutes of the movie. It really is the last 10 minutes. I could not get over the fact that the amount of Warner Brothers IP that they beamed in to watch the movie, to watch the game at the end of the big game, they pull in from the entire Warner Brothers catalog all of these characters that are going to be courtside watching this game.
Ready Player One.
So you will spend, and honestly, go back and watch the movie and just spend time looking in the backgrounds, because they don't take digital recreations of the actual characters. They get bad cosplay of people playing Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze or Agent Smith from The Matrix. The guys from Clockwork Orange are sitting there watching Space Jam.
I thought that was cool.
Jim Carrey's The Mask is there.
I didn't mind that.
Old 1960s Batman and Robin are there, and they're pointing at the people as they're playing. And then every time the camera spun, I saw somebody new. Will Smith's character from Wild Wild West is there. It's the most random Warner Brothers IP I've ever seen in my entire life as just a commercial. But it's weird in a way because like they do this thing where they need the people on the court to get their lines out, so everybody in the back is just quietly pretending they're at a basketball game. Oh, it's awful. It's awful. But in a way, you have to see it.
The way you just described it, I gotta see it now.
Dude, it's definitely not as bad as he's saying it is. It's also not great. I'm middle of the road, mixed bag. Sean obviously actively dislikes the film. I think it has moments that I enjoyed. It's not that bad, but it's nowhere near as good as the first one.
Okay. Let's get to this week's blend game. We pivoted. We were going to do food scene blend, as I mentioned a little bit. We're going to do that after the fact. We're going to do that next week because we lost an icon and someone who has been incredibly important to us as film fans. Growing up, he made a number of incredibly strong films, incredibly influential films to us. Is Richard Donner, who passed away at 91, led an incredible life, both as a director and as a producer. And so we're playing Richard Donner blend. We got great responses from everybody who chimed in. Jake, let's start with you. Where are you going for your favorite Richard Donner?
I got to go Lethal Weapon. It perfected. It maybe. Obviously, it didn't create the genre of the buddy cop movie, but I don't think it had been done as well up to that point. And to be honest, I don't think it's been done. Like it is the buddy cop movie by which all buddy cop movies shall be judged. It's when you talk about anytime if a buddy cop movie were to come out tomorrow, everyone's review at some point would use the words Lethal Weapon. And there are so many factors to it. Like. Richard Donner knew, like I understood, sort of to allow Mel Gibson and Danny Glover to kind of do and recognize the chemistry that they had and allow them to take the forefront. But it's also like an incredible story and like the action is awesome. And it's not one thing has to be stronger because the other things are weaker. All three in my head as I'm visualizing it, aspects of what make Lethal Weapon are great. But they're all kind of maneuvering. They kind of do this tango where, like, at some point he lets the guys sort of take the lead and just let them be the focus of the movie. And then at a certain point, you let the action kind of take the forefront because the action's awesome. And then it's also, like, a really killer story. So you really push the story forefront. And it's this really nice blend of all three things just meshing and working well. It's like three puzzle pieces that just do that perfect little snap into place. And it's my favorite movie of his by far, and one of the greatest action films ever made.
Yeah.
Kev, where are you?
So I'm wondering if Sean and I went with the same one. I do want to just give a special shout out to Lethal Weapon 4, which I love.
I love Lethal Weapon 4.
I love Lethal Weapon 4.
There's not a bad Lethal Weapon. There's no bad Lethal Weapon.
I'm with you. I thought 4 particularly I love. I'm gonna go with Superman only because of this reason. I rewatched it recently for the first time. It's been a long time since I haven't seen that movie probably since I was a kid. with my dad. I used to play on TV all the time, right? When I rewatched Superman recently, I got to watch it in 4K. It blew my mind because it's 1978. And you think about where we are now in terms of superhero films. What I loved about it was the caliber of actors who were in that film, in a Superman comic book film in 1978. Like, we're in a time period now where it's just normal to see Downey and these big stars show up in the Marvel films. But for Brando and Hackman and Christopher Reeve, obviously, I mean, like, you think about, especially Brando, because Brando's coming off of Godfather at this point. What year was the first Godfather? 70 and 72?
73? Yeah, 72 or 73.
Right. And then he does 2, and then you do Superman 4 years later. And it's a really cool thing. So, and this is something I actually learned recently, the Mario Puzo aspect of it. The guy who wrote Godfather. Is that the same person who wrote the story for this movie? Because I was looking on the only reason I noticed that, I'll double check it on IMDb. So IMDb says Mario Puzo's the story, and obviously Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they're being credited in terms of the writing and the creating, obviously. But Mario Puzo is story credited. Now, I don't know if that's accurate. And the only reason I noticed that was because the opening credits of Superman are some of the best I've ever seen.
Yeah, they are really cool.
Like, that opening credits is so, and it's so simple. It's not like a crazy spectacle. It's just words and titles, but the way it's done is so cinematic. It just, I got to a point in my life where I was kind of like over the idea of opening credits. I kind of wanted a movie just to start, so I didn't know I was watching a movie. But as I was watching this version of Superman, I dove into the universe in that opening credits, and it didn't have to be a scene or anything.
It's almost
it was
like
just
turning the first page into a comic book. Like
100%.
Here we are. This is the world we're in.
The music, it also completely made me understand Sean's love of John Williams' score. And like, obviously, I knew the score. I've seen the film, but I hadn't seen this Superman after watching all of these Marvel and DC films we've been watching for the past 10 or 15 years.
It is a triumphant score.
It's an outstanding film. To think about that movie being made in a bubble before superhero movies were really kind of a big deal. Is fascinating to me.
Because they took it seriously.
Right. I'm trying to think of Brando getting a script after Godfather 1 and 2. After all the movies he made in the 50s and 60s. And then going, I want to make a Superman movie, and even the graphics, the white outfits that they're wearing, and before the planet explodes, it's so interesting and so vibrant and so immersive and so, I don't know. I just had a very different experience with this film than I did as a kid.
Well,
I'm 37 years old. It
2001, Star Wars. Close Encounters, they were starting to open the door to sci-fi, you know?
Right.
So Brando reads about Krypton, you know, and playing Jor-El. I'm sure he thought, like, all right, I'm going to get in on this.
By the way, and forgive my ignorance on this, Brando calls it Krypton in the movie.
I think people are just afraid to correct him.
Yeah,
what?
I'm sure.
So is that what it was? Because, so is it Krypton or is it Krypton?
It's Krypton. It's Krypton.
Why does they say Krypton? I looked at Lauren. I'm like, wait a second. Did Brando just say Krypton?
Because it's Marlon Brando.
It's Brando. He did what he wanted. And nobody corrected him.
You're lucky he showed up to set. Okay, like just before Sean interjects, I will say a testament to how big of a film that was and why it works is, to me, the tagline. Because remember, like, you know, we take for granted today all the stuff that we see and then believe on the big screen. Their tagline was, "You'll believe a man could fly," and like that movie was like convinced people, like, holy shit, like, how are they, like, we forget, like, you know, like, put yourself back in 1978 when that came out, like, that tagline perfectly suited that period and that moment and how audiences ingested that film and really how much we take for granted today, I think. So Sean, go ahead.
No, I completely agree with you. And one other thing I'll make before Sean goes to his pick is this. As I'm watching the film, it actually made me appreciate what Snyder did more with Man of Steel. Because I hadn't seen this Superman since I had seen Snyder's Man of Steel. I hadn't seen this Superman since I was a kid. But like, to see the themes that Donner was playing with and to see how Snyder then explored and kind of pushed those even more forward, it's an outstanding achievement. And I think in the bubble of when that film was made, I mean, yeah, you can knock the graphics nowadays if you want to, but at the end of the day, I said graphics like it's a video game, the special effects, but at the end of the day, I mean, the miniature work on that film is awesome. So to me, that's my favorite Donner film, only because it was a very cool experience to experience it again years later after all the stuff we've been watching. It was a very different film for me, so that's my favorite.
Awesome. I was deeply torn between both of your picks and didn't go with either of them. I probably would have leaned towards Lethal Weapon because I adore that film with all of my heart. But in a way that Kevin often talks about, T2 arriving at a time that it was just like perfect for him.
Changed everything.
The Goonies in 1985, when I was 11, was just everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think I can ever overlook the impact that movie had on me for several years after. I probably don't think I've talked at length about this on the show, but like,
I didn't realize that you were a Goonies fan.
Neither did I, but I'm actually a little bit surprised by this pick because, and to Sean's point and to his answer, why this pick is awesome, it shows you how diverse his filmography is. But go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, Donner. Yeah, the fact that Donner did this is, and I love that Donner would tell stories about like he hated working with the kids, like he wanted nothing to do with them.
And that Spielberg prank. You heard about the Spielberg prank?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, I don't know this. I don't know this.
Basically, like I think Donner was like ready to go when the Goonies were over. He just wanted to get the hell out of there, and he booked a vacation to Hawaii. And he said he's walking down the beach in Hawaii, thinking like, "Oh my God, thank God, I'm finally done." And he looks in the distance and sees the kids running toward him, waving. Spielberg had booked them all flights to Hawaii.
That's amazing.
So Goonies is one of those movies that I mean, I loved it so much. And so as a kid, I was collecting, like magazines would come out that like introduced you to like behind the scenes, meet the kids who played the Goonies. I was absorbing all of that. I was begging my parents to take me to Goodwill so I could get like a long green jacket like Data wears. And I would fill the pockets with things that would sort of mimic his gadgets. I swear to God, I had an idea for something that I wanted to build that I thought would, I was trying to convince my father that it would work. I wanted us to go around to dumps, essentially, like places where you bring old cars, because back in the day, in order to pop the hood of the car, there was like a coil, like a spring coil that would push up the front of the car. And I thought that if I could slice off the bottom layer of my sneaker and then put 3 of those coils and then reattach the thing, that I would be able to trigger like spring shoes, and then I could run. That was my Data invention because I was obsessed with this movie. I begged my parents to vacation in Oregon because I was convinced that I could go around and find a cave that would allow me to go on some kind of adventure. All of the personalities from the kids in the Goonies, I feel like I had a sliver of each of their personalities. Like, I wanted to be inventive like Data. I wanted to be funny like Mouth. Like Mouth taking the lady around and speaking Spanish, but telling Mo like, here's where we put all the drugs. Like that humor to me was so perfect. I wanted to be a good kid like Mikey was. Like Mikey is a great leader. And then like the fact that this movie even introduces the Fratellis and the weirdness that is Sloth and where this is going to go, but it finds like the heartwarming element of it. Like, I understand now that people have gone back to try to rewatch Goonies, and it's kind of grating. You know, it's just kids screaming at each other for the entire bit. But
to be fair, 11, that's our podcast.
Yeah, essentially. At 11, it's literally like someone stuck a camera in the back of my head and just like beamed out of my eyes the movie that I was waiting to see. And so it is clearly one of those influential films that sent me down this path. So I couldn't not choose it.
The emotional story that you just told is exactly why I love our show. Like that is like that's exactly why we do the blend game. Like that is like such a personal thing. Like you're not saying the Goonies is the greatest movie of all time. You're saying what it meant to you at that time. And the fact that you're now in your 40s and you can go back and remember those exact details of what that movie did for you.
Yep.
And it's an incredible thing. I actually feel honored that I got to hear you tell that story, because like that to me is why we do this show. That's why we love movies so much. I mean, look at the excitement that you just told that, and all the detail. And I was imagining your shoes with springs and like jumping. I was like, I hope someone should make those. That sounds awesome.
Now that I have kids, I can only imagine my father as I tried to convince him this is why we need to drive around to the dumps, because I want to take the springs off of the. He must have been like, just shut the fuck up. Will you please just go? Will you please just go away? And I was like, no, I swear, if I just cut the layer off of my shoe, I can turn them into springs. I had a whole system in place where I was going to put like hooks, like a hook in an eye to hold them closed, and there would be a string that went up my leg, and I would pull the string and they would undo the hooks, and then that's when the spring shoes would come out. So whatever the anniversary was for Goonies, I think it was like 30 years ago recently. I forget what so 85, 95, 2005, 2015, 2020.
It would have been 35.
35.
2000, yeah, 35. They were holding a fan convention in Astoria where they filmed it. So you can go to visit the locations. They're going to have a screening up on the thing. And I worked every angle I could through their Convention and Visitors Bureau to pay for my travel out there. And then for whatever reason, something was going on at work and I couldn't make it. And I was kind of heartbroken because I would have loved to just go out and see all those locations where they filmed The Goonies. So let's see. Christine, Nicole, and India Christina picked The Omen. Which,
I love
again,
The Omen.
Talking about Donner's filmography, how different it is. Jake Skelly says Conspiracy Theory.
That's
saying
what I want to mention. That's an underrated movie. Underrated movie.
That's what he says. Totally underrated. Ralphie Ezra and Isaiah Washington went with Lethal Weapon. Kimberly Sue and Andrew Meller said The Goonies. Satith's Godey went with Lethal Weapon 2 and singled that one out. Doug Verby went with Scrooged. Stephen, John Palmer, Harry Lickman, and many others went with Superman. So like I said, at the beginning of this game, we are going to do hashtag food scene blend next week, so hold your picks, send them in to us via email at realblend@cinemablend.com.
I'm excited about that.
Or use them on social media. We have a review this week from someone named Robert Hillier, who says, longtime listener, second-time reviewer. With this past episode being so opinionated, I thought I could chime in on where I do and don't agree with each of you. Oh, all right. This is going to be really interesting.
What did we? What was the episode that we?
I think
Fast and Furious.
I think this is after the Soderbergh episode, which I guess was Fast and Furious. Yeah.
That was pretty opinionated.
Pretty
Sean,
heated.
he writes to me. I love your views on superheroes and specifically Marvel movies. I also don't love Lord of the Rings as much as many do, but Kill Bill is one movie, and your opinion on Gladiator is beyond me.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Jake.
Oh.
I, for the life of me, don't understand your dislike of Endgame, but I actually thoroughly enjoy Larry Crown and your overall love for Tom Hanks. This is great. I kind of love this. I want more reviews where people come at us individually.
Please.
Kevin.
Oh, no.
I love the Fast and Furious movies and wholeheartedly agree with your opinion on them. I just can't wrap around Face Off deserving an Academy Award. See,
it kind of bothers me that the thing that he most agreed with me on is Larry Crown.
Yeah, it's kind of that's on brand for you.
I will clarify. I think Cage and Travolta deserved Best Actor nominations. Okay. I didn't say picture.
Gabe, I share your love for whodunits and particularly Knives Out. I just can't fully get on board with your view on Rise of Skywalker. All right, Rise of Skywalker fan.
Yeah, all right.
I love hearing all your opinions and helping them to form my own and getting really the perfect amount of debate and playful banter. Thank you all for providing 2.5 hours or so of entertainment during my many commutes a week. So Robert, thank you so much for that review.
That dude won me over. I was so excited, and I was like, oh no, come on. Why'd you have to go there with the Face Off? You had me.
Imagine being told the best thing about you is that you like Larry Crown.
He should have said Road to Perdition. Road to Perdition would have made a little
19th
more
anniversary
sense.
Yesterday.
Oh yeah, I saw that. What an insignificant anniversary for it to celebrate.
Insignificantly kick your ass. How about that?
It's the 18th and a half anniversary. Yeah. Who even pays attention to that? All right, our next premium episode.
You know what? The next time you have a weird anniversary with Michelle, I'm like, oh, that's insignificant. No one cares.
But see, I wouldn't even bring up the 19th anniversary.
Not a bad point.
Oh, I'm sure she would love to hear that.
I'm not going to mention it on the show.
That's not a bad point.
Are you ashamed?
Anyway, our next premiere episode is behind the scenes.
Premium. We're not Disney Plus.
What did I say? Disney
Plus Premiere Access episode of Real Blend.
$30.
Premiere Access.
Behind the scenes of Quentin Tarantino, and let me tell you guys, we have a lot of stories to share. Not just of the build up to the show, but of the night itself. It's pretty insane. So you're gonna want to listen to that. It'll drop on Monday. Again, you can get access to this and all episodes of Real Blend Premium at cinemablend.com/RealBlend Premium. Follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, and at Gabe Kovac. You can follow the show at Real Blend, and we'll be back next week with an all new episode. So make sure you're right back here where you get your podcast needs met.
Duel!
The BFG!
What happened to Hubie?
No, Spielberg's. We're shouting Spielberg names.
We've been doing this for like 5 months.
I want Spielberg to direct Hubie too.
You should.